Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 50. Hello, True Health seekers, and welcome to another intriguing episode of the Learn True Health podcast. First, I have to apologize for the delay in getting more episodes out to you. In the last week, my dear cat, Dexter, fell sick. He was 11 and a half years old and out of nowhere lost 2 pounds and got really sick. We brought him into the vet. All the tests they ran, they had no idea what was wrong with him. They said, it's possible that he was exposed to a toxin or something poisonous, but he's an indoor cat and we just don't know what's going on. Unfortunately, he passed away in my arms on Monday, and I have been just grieving. It has been so difficult. I didn't realize, how hard it would be to lose such an amazing part of our family. He was the most gentle and loving animal I have ever met. He would never bite, even if my toddler picked him up and carried him around, or tackled him or pulled his tail. He was always so gentle. So this episode's dedicated to Dexter, who taught me how to be even more loving and more gentle and more accepting of people around me through his actions. Now, it was kismet that my guest I interviewed yesterday, Caroline Blazovsky, who is America's healthy home expert, talks about the toxins in the home and how they can actually poison us. And yes, she has seen in the last 20 years that she's been in people's homes. She's been in thousands and thousands of homes. She's been hired to come into the home and find out what is harming us, whether it's black mold or whether it's off-gassing from you name it. There's so many things in our environment in our home that we just think are safe because, we live in a wonderful country where we have great standards. So of course, if we bought furniture or a mattress or a carpet or paint that we painted our walls with or cleaning products, that it would be safe to have in our home. She talks about how even something you'd think would be benign or even so-called quote unquote green products can be toxic and can actually off-gas while still in the plastic bottles while they're under your sink. And she's not just saying this because she's, super sensitive to smells or chemicals. She's saying this because she's following the science. She's actually in the process of getting her doctorate so that she can become a researcher to prove the things that she has been teaching in the last 20 years, and she has seen through science. So she has test kits where she can have you can buy a test kit wherever you are around the world. You can buy a test kit and you can test for all kinds of molds. Even if you don't see them with your eyes, the test kit will pick it up or not. She has test kits so accurate when you test the air quality in your house, she'll be able to tell you the brand of the cleaning products that you have in your house because they're off-gassing and they get in the test kit. She can say, hey, you have mothballs and this is the level that your body is actually absorbing. I don't want to give too much away because you're going to learn it from her today in this episode, but I have to tell you that I was blown away and that I knew it was fate that unfortunately too late to save Dexter. But here we have my cat all of a sudden falls sick and the vet ran every test and said, I really think it's something that maybe it ingested or it was exposed to. And I asked Caroline, have you seen pets become sick from the things that we bring into our home? She's absolutely. She has seen pets pass away or pets get sick, but also humans. She has helped people with autoimmune diseases and fibromyalgia and unexplained illnesses or fatigue. And when she helps them to remove a certain thing from the house or maybe put in an air filter or, just with her guidance, they get better. Most of the time, she says, when she works with people who have chronic illness, they see a significant level of improvement after they've made these simple changes to their house that are actually quite affordable because this is a toxic load, and if your body is already stressed, this toxic load can put further stress. Now, Dr. Joel Wallach, who's this naturopathic physician that I am a huge fan of and I've been following, he says the body needs to be fully nutrified, and that pollutants will further stress the body. They can actually cause the body to become minerally deficient or nutrient deficient, because it's putting an extra stress on the body. So if you're someone who wants to fully nutrify yourself, you want to achieve optimal health, you want to achieve true health and learn how to achieve true health, then creating a healthy environment in your home where it's free of mold, free of toxins, free of obesogens. These are nasty, nasty chemicals that are now in our environment in the last 20, 30 years that actually mimic our hormones, and you can buy a product that is safe on the shelf and you think it's safe, you bring it home and it actually does something to your hormones. It's just unbelievable. Caroline also teaches that tap water is carcinogenic. And I know you're thinking, what? That's crazy. That's crazy that tap water is carcinogenic. But there's a recent study, and I'm linking it in the show notes. Caroline talks about why tap water is carcinogenic, the chemicals that we're putting in it. There's science behind it. This is absolutely amazing. So buckle up and get ready for a mind-blowing episode. And I have in the past 2 weeks, even though I didn't put out any episodes in the last week, I continued to do my scheduled interviews, and I have had 4 amazing, mind-blowing interviews with experts that I'm so excited to release these episodes in the coming week. You're going to love it. If you get anything out of my podcast, and obviously you do because you listen, please share it. Please share it with those you love. Please share it with those who are also seeking health. This information needs to get out there. It is unbelievable. So enjoy today's show. Caroline Blazovsky, America's Healthy Home Expert, and you can check her out by going to her website, which is healthyhomeexpert.com. And again, all the links and everything we talk about and the science, the reports, there's even a PDF that is government issued PDF that summarizes the tests they did on the water, city water, and that explains the science behind why these chemicals that we're putting in our tap water is carcinogenic. And it's unbelievable that we're still putting these chemicals in the tap water. But there you go. So there are simple things you can do, like get water filters, and Caroline goes into teaching what we can do, the simple changes we can make. I'm going to definitely have her back on the show. If while you're listening to this episode, you have questions come up, write them down. Please email them to me. If I get enough questions from the listeners, then I'll have Caroline back on the show just for the Q&A to answer all your questions, because she's just a wealth of knowledge, and she's going to help us clean up our home so that it is a neutral, healthy space that doesn't put toxic stress on our bodies. And just imagine if you have smaller beings in your household, like pets or children or elderly. We need to make sure that the environment in our house and the air quality in our house doesn't have a toxic load. She says that children with allergies, it doesn't have to be sniffly allergies, but like food allergies, an inflammation in the body, any kind of pollutants in the house can actually exacerbate the inflammation. And she says that she's worked with children on the spectrum, on the autistic spectrum, children with ADHD or behavioral issues. And when she helps the parents take the toxins out of the house, that it clears up, that the children have an easier time at school, that they have an easier time with their emotions, with their behavior. So just imagine what your home environment is doing to you. Is it a healthy environment, or is it a toxic environment? And she called me out on some stuff that I'm doing in my house that I need to figure out how to clean up. And so I'm going to follow her guidance as well. So enjoy today's show. Please email me with any questions you have for Caroline, and we'll have her back on. Only if I get enough questions for her, obviously, to do another show. So please email me with questions. My email is ashley@learntruehealth.com. That's ashley@learntruehealth.com. And please share this episode with those you love, especially if you know someone with pets that love their pets, that have children in their house. Share this episode with them, because the information can be life-saving. Now, do you have any questions for me before we get started?
No, just tell me a little bit about, I know we talked briefly this afternoon. Just tell me a little bit about your program and why you started it, and, why you do what you do, and that kind of thing would be, nice to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been involved in sort of the health. I've been actually intrigued about health ever since I was a kid. I'm an only child, and my mom would read all kinds of health books. When I was young, I was sick, and so was my mom. And so she found a naturopathic doctor by the name of Dr. Diadamo. He was the creator of the Eat Right for Your Blood Type diet. He's a very famous naturopath, and he happened to be in the same town as us. So we saw him, and he changed our diet and gave us supplements, and our health improved so much so that I just became intrigued. And I got into natural medicine at a young age, and then I have had my own health challenges. So for me, it's been about seeking the information. I've sought many doctors and befriended a lot of naturopathic doctors. And when it came to, I've always wanted to do a podcast ever since podcasting came out for the last 10 years, and I just didn't know what to do it on. But as I matured and my sort of career progressed more and more towards natural medicine, this is where I decided to open up the podcast. And we actually started thinking about it a year ago, and then researching it and reading all about it. And then we started recording at the beginning of the year, and in March we launched. And we have been, like I said, in number one in iTunes under New Noteworthy for Health and Science and Medicine and Education for over 3 months. It fluctuates in those other two categories, but in health we've pretty much stayed at number one. And yeah, we have 49 episodes up. So,
that's great. Yeah. That's wonderful.
Yeah. So for me, it's about helping people find the answers that they wouldn't get from a 15-minute MD,
visit,
because I mean, a part of me really did. I mean, I just dislike the entire medical system. It's not. It works in some areas, and it doesn't work in more areas than it does.
Correct.
Obviously, we're humans. We're not perfect, but I'm really frustrated with how we've sort of accepted that this is the status quo. And so my listeners are people who don't accept the status quo, and they're looking to educate themselves to gain health, either because they've suffered from symptoms for so long and their MDs don't have any answers, or they just are the type of self-motivated learners that are autodidacts that want to go and seek out answers for themselves. My listeners are probably the ones that annoy their doctor because they come so well prepared to their appointments that they're really advocates for their own health. And some doctors don't like that,
right.
Which, of course, all the doctors that I've interviewed urge listeners to find a doctor that will support their patient in learning, because the Latin root of doctor is docere, which means teacher. So doctors are supposed to teach us how to gain health, but they don't now. So there's people like you that want to teach how to gain health.
And the thing is, too, I teach doctors how to incorporate a lot of this stuff, which they don't really understand. But the interesting thing, too, is that people lose sight of the fact that modern medicine is very new. 19th century, late 19th century is when we really started to use modern medicine. Before that, we used allopathy, we used alternative medicine, we used, some science-based things, medicine men, people who came to whatever we could get our hands on to heal is what we used. And then in the late 19th century, we started to rely on science, and then medicine and the medical doctor itself became the this guru, and we lost all those other types of medicine. And now what's happening is we're sort of taking a complete 180 and going back to incorporating those medicines into, how we practice medicine. And unfortunately, we've gone full circle. So, and what people don't realize is that this modern medicine is really, really new. It's not, we just started having real health care and Medicaid and all these things in 1965, which is not that long ago. It's not something that we just put so much stock in it, and it's really not that new it's very new of an industry. So we have to all keep that in mind too, as we sort of critique it, because I think what's going to happen is we're going to go back to the original way that it was, where all of these medicines become sort of, important in the process. Hopefully, that's what I'm hoping happens.
Well, anyway. I really like that you pointed out it's so new, and that we need to evaluate it. We take for granted, we give over our trust to faceless companies that are making, for example, our mattresses, our carpets, our upholstery. And we just assume that because there's safety standards out there, that anything we were to buy and bring into our home would be safe for us, would be non-toxic.
Right. And I don't know how we developed that conception. You know what I mean? I don't know where that came from, because in reality, nobody ever said that to us. Nobody ever said because somebody makes a product, it's safe for you.
Right.
But somewhere along the line, whether it's marketing, advertising, just word of mouth, a lot of things have gotten passed down in medicine too, like rules and things, because of word of mouth, right? Or because of history or some kind of old wives' tale that gets, brought up and keeps getting renewed and renewed. And so I don't know, nobody really ever said that these people are going to look out for us, but somehow as a consumer, we think that they're going to, and now we're learning the hard way that that's not the case. So.
When my husband and I have a 16-month-old, and when we went shopping about a year ago, we started to research and shop for the crib. It was amazing that we had to pay pretty much double for a crib that was made with certified non-toxic glue and non-toxic paint.
Right. Exactly.
And just to think that regular baby furniture bought at major retailers can be made with toxic glue and toxic paint, and that's okay.
Well, and the other thing I'm going to tell you is that, and this is going to throw a whole monkey wrench in everything, but because something is green, and I have a green business, I've been a proponent of the environment for almost 20 years. Because something's green doesn't mean it's healthy. Right. So people start to think that, well, I'm going to use essential oils every day, and I'm going to put lavender and eucalyptus and orange and pine all over my house because this is supposed to be healing. You use more than 15 minutes a day, and then it becomes very, very destructive to the lining of your lung. A lot of these things like turpentine and, turpentine is a natural thing that comes from pinene, which is a volatile organic. A lot of these things are volatile organics. Your body doesn't recognize the difference between a synthetic volatile organic and a non-synthetic. Formaldehyde is a naturally occurring element. It's a naturally occurring chemical that's found in trees, naturally in wood. You're going to have it. So a lot of these things, people say, oh, well, I'm natural, so therefore I'm healthy. Doesn't go that way. It doesn't go. We'd like it to go that way, but it doesn't. Just because something's natural doesn't mean it's good for you. Black widow spiders are natural. But so the thing is that there has to be some sort of, and I think as we go around here, some sort of regulation, some sort of, whether it's natural, unnatural, there has to be some sort of authority, and whether that's people as a community or legislation, government, whatever it is, that sort of tells us, okay, well, what are the parameters for something being healthy, whether it's green or not? And that's what I think you and I and people like us are trying to accomplish anyway, that we're trying to set some sort of guideline.
I'm really curious, how did you get started? So you've been doing this for you've been green for 20 years. How did you become America's healthy home expert?
I started, I developed very bad allergies in my 20s, and I had, like you seek medical attention because that's what your parents tell you. Well, if you don't feel well, you go to the doctor, and that's what I did. And I found that there were very little solutions for people who had allergies. They're just, it was take this drug, and, you took a drug and maybe you felt a little doped up, or you felt sort of sedated, but it didn't really help. It didn't make the situation better. So I started to really just investigate into different things, and I stumbled upon mold. And about 20 years ago, I was doing mold when other people were not, in that industry. And I said, look, mold can make you sick. Molds are toxic. And, I was met with a lot of backlash. People don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that, something that is in their home could potentially make them sick. So you develop a very thick skin. And for years and years and years, I was saying, well, look, molds are bad. And then finally now it's become very commonplace that people test for mold, that you test for mold in real estate, and that we know molds have a toxic effect on the body and can be, quite intrusive, when it comes to causing asthma and bronchial problems. So, it's part of its time. And like I said, I got into it when there weren't a lot of people doing this. And so I've kind of been in the forefront of that, which I really much enjoy, but it did give me a thick skin. So you've got to sort of, like a lot of your listeners, I'm sure they have developed, they've heard no, or they've heard no, you're wrong. And in reality, they're probably right. So you just have to stick with what you believe in and what works for you.
Stand your ground. Now, you are, one of your certifications is as a mold remediator and investigator. What does that entail? What does it entail to investigate mold? And so you are asked, walk us through. So someone hires you and then you go to their house and what is the process?
Yeah, well, mostly I look at residential homes. That's my specialty. I've been doing that for 16 years. And I like to just focus on the home because that's my personal preference. I think that we spend a lot of time in our homes. And because we do, there's a lot of things, unfortunately, that can go wrong that we're sort of not aware of. And then we ignore things, or we don't do general maintenance on homes that need to be done. So I began focusing on homes. And what I look at are environmental factors in a home that could contribute to illness, not being well, also unhealthy conditions. So I focus on things like mold. I also focus on things like volatile organic compounds, which, we talked about a little bit, chemicals in different things that we use in our homes that come off things like building supplies, personal care products, gasoline, sewer gas, things like that. And then I also deal with a lot of allergy proteins. So I look a lot at when people have strange allergies, like children who have peanut allergies. I investigate the home for various things like dust mites, cockroach, peanut allergies, mold proteins, things like that. So there's a lot of things in a home that can go wrong. And that's my job, is to investigate what could potentially be causing health effects. And I work a lot with physicians who send their patients to me that, have unexplained symptoms, and we figure out why they're not feeling well.
So what are some of the symptoms of mold toxicity?
Most of the time, over 16 years, I've seen a lot of people complain. A lot of sinus infections, pneumonia is a common one, headaches. It really does seem to run in suit. So, usually when I talk to somebody and their doctor sent them to me and they tell me, I've been experiencing this or that, it does point me in a direction. And most of the time you'll see these chronic infections, things that don't get better, don't heal up. The immune system seems to be sort of sluggish or suppressed. And those tend to be mold situations. Now, especially if you're living in different parts of the country, with your show, we have a lot of listeners that are in all different regions, and you never know where somebody is. So, there's different areas that are prone to mold problems. You get Florida, Georgia, a lot of the southern states, as well as the Northeast. We have a tremendous amount of mold here because of the difference in temperature. People always think that, well, it's got to be hot and humid, and that's why you get mold. But in reality, when you have a lot of temperature changes, so if you have a cold basement in a hot room and these temperatures meet, just like a glass that you put out in a cold glass in a hot day, you're going to see that sweating. That's the same thing that happens in your home when you have a cold basement and hot airspace. So when we have a lot of these changes in temperature, and now because of climate change and the things that we're seeing with global warming, we're really experiencing a lot of just drastic weather patterns that are influencing how our homes are affected. And these things are causing mold to proliferate. We're getting a lot of drops in temperature where you've got a 20-degree swing, or excessive storms where you've got tons of, water and flooding. So all of these things really impact us, and houses were not built to handle that type of destruction and change. So those hot and cold temperatures really play a lot in the Northeast. And then, of course, and you can get that in California and even in desert places where you'd think there'd be less mold. They still do have mold because of air conditioning and changes in temperature.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I lived in Vegas for a while. You could absolutely get mold there. And I was surprised. Now, is there harmless mold, or is all mold bad?
Well, molds are actually really good. We want them because they're fungus that are basically, and there's thousands and thousands of species of mold. Thousands, hundreds of thousands. So, and what molds do is they break down organic material, things like wood and leaves and things like that when they're outside, right? That's the good part about it. It's going to break down all kinds of stuff and destroy it. But when we get them in our home and we get an infiltration because we have water damage or condensation or leaking or whatever water situation we have going on, then they form in the house. And when they do that, then they become problematic to us. So yes, they're good when they're outside where they're supposed to be. No, they're not so great. And there are variants in mold. So some molds are more toxic than others. Some molds can cause more symptoms, and I'll kind of explain that in a little bit. But yes. So to answer your question, yes and no.
Okay, great. Now, so like I have the shower curtain. It's not that old, but I noticed there's black spots on it. I'm like, maybe this is mold growing on my shower curtain. Like, is this something that is there like a sort of a, hey, if you think your bathroom has mold in it, just spray, tea tree, or is there like a trick that you tell people to do, or do they need to get a special product to kill mold?
Well, if you start to see mold progressively getting worse and you see it where you wipe it away, especially around the interior of your shower, right? So let's not remove the curtain for now, but if you see it starting to form on your tile or around the lip of your shower or on the base of your shower, and you're wiping it away and then within a couple days it's back, that's usually a sign that something's going on behind the wall somewhere. So for example, with bathrooms, you're really lucky if you get about 20 to 25 years out of a bathroom. And then that's my little window for it's time to remodel. Unfortunately, we used to get a longer duration because of how the bathrooms were built. They were built a little bit more solid with like mud and, with cement and tile. And now we're building with a lot of products that really feed mold. So you're lucky sometimes if you get 10 to 12 years out of a bathroom. But you have to remember you're bringing a water source in. So when you're showering and bathing, no matter what you do, a percentage of that water will leak through your grout. It'll condensate underneath where you can't see it from a hot tub and a cold floor. So eventually you'll get moisture and deterioration of your plywood underneath your shower and pan and things like that in your bathroom. So you eventually need to remodel. So if you start to see it coming back, like what I'm saying, if you're cleaning and then it reappears, start to really think about how long was my bathroom there and am I due for a remodel? Is it time? Because usually it's growing behind the walls and then it starts to come to the surface and that's when you start to see it. Now, in your case with a shower curtain, if you're just seeing it on the shower curtain, it's probably just time for a new shower curtain. And you can try a breathable shower curtain, something like either a polyester or a material that breathes. A lot of these vinyl plastic shower curtains are not good because they don't let air into the shower to help dry out the water. So you want to try to use something breathable.
Interesting. Very interesting. Now, do people hire you to travel to their home, or like how would a listener work with you if they were thinking that they had a mold problem or they wanted to create a more environmentally healthy home? Your website, which is healthyhomeexpert.com. I know they can go to your website, but do you like travel to people's homes, or do you do like Skype interviews? How does it work?
Yes, they can hire me as a consultant. Now, many years later, we've developed test kits now for doctors' offices, and that we use this with patients as well and people who are interested in testing. So you're able to test your home for molds, allergens, volatile organics, proteins. We're able to do a pretty comprehensive check from wherever we are in the country. So you can do a phone interview or phone consultation. We talk, and then we'll send you out some kits. You'll pull some samples for it. That will go back to our laboratory. And then within a week, we have results about your environment and what's going on. And I typically do that internationally. I've been doing things internationally now for a while, and then of course all over the United States. People I've done at homes in every state, and it just really depends on, what people are looking to accomplish. Some people don't feel well. That's why they seek us out and they want to find out what's in their home. Some people have children who have special needs, somewhere on the spectrum, learning disabilities. They want to know what their environment is. Some people have chronic conditions. We find that when people improve their living space, chronic conditions get better. Mm-hmm. So you're reducing that load that's on your body. If your body already has to deal with a chronic situation, doctors use us to help, reduce excess. So what we're looking for is, where are you out of line in your home? To have a little of everything is probably okay. It's just when we see these numbers sort of spawn out into 3,000 volatiles in a home when you should be under 500, those things have us concerned. And that's why doctors will send patients to us to evaluate what's going on. To, even if they're a sick patient, you want to get those loads off your body, because it's going to help your body to have to deal with what it has to deal with without being suppressed in another way. So it's, we use it in a lot of different capacities.
I was just thinking about, I bought one of those mattresses to put on top of the bed that was made of memory foam, like a memory foam topper. And it smelled so horrible when I took it out of the package. And the instructions are, let it lay out flat and off gas for like 2 days. And I opened all the windows, and it was unbelievable. It gave me a headache just smelling the fumes.
The polyurethane is what it is. It's the polyurethane foam. And it's just, and lots of people complain about it, and it is a known problem. And unfortunately, I think too, like some people, I deal a lot with people who are chronically sick, and they're like, well, I need the foam because it makes me feel better to lay on that particular type of mattress, especially if you have head or neck injuries or anything like that. So I try to weigh out the pluses and minuses, and you want to say, okay, well, I don't want someone to be uncomfortable. We want to use these things to the best of their ability. So, really outgassing that and letting it really, not outgassing your home. If you can take it somewhere else and let it, be ventilated and lose some of that volatiles is much more healthy, especially if you have to use it.
So I was leading into that. There are certain things we bring into the home that off gas. So carpets, furniture, mattresses. So what is your experience with these different products? Or like there's people who will rent apartments, and the apartment complex will replace the carpet every few years. When one renter moves out, they'll replace the carpet. So as renters renting apartments, they're sort of always exposed to new carpeting. How long does that off gas, and how toxic is it?
Well, it really depends on your overall number, what we call a TVOC. So, volatile organics are the chemicals, these VOCs that we're talking about. They're the chemicals that come off your personal care products. They come off building materials. They come off paints. Paints are the big thing that everybody's familiar with, because we hear about low VOC paint. But everything, even natural things, put off volatile organics. So that VOC can be applied to your bedding. It can be applied to wallboard. It can be applied to your perfume, hair dye, whatever you have. All of these things have VOCs. So what we do in my profession, and what I do, is measure a home, and I say, okay, how many volatiles does this house have? And comparatively to other homes across the country, where does this house fit in? And then we use the U.S. Green Building Council standard. We use some European standards, and a couple of the labs that we use for VOCs have developed standards. And then we look at the house and we say, okay, we want you to be under 500 total volatiles. And then if we test your home and you're way over that, we try to reduce them to get you to the number where you have to be. So with a renter, like going back to the renting situation, you're going to have new paint. You're going to have new carpeting. Paint, for example, will stay in once you paint, it's there for about 18 months. So it's a very long time. And people think, oh, I paint, I don't smell it anymore, therefore it's not there. Well, unfortunately, our sense of smell is not always so keen, and these things do linger for quite a period of time. The other thing, too, is that with these no VOC paints, there is no such thing as a no VOC paint. It doesn't exist. But somehow they've been able to market it as a no VOC, but there's always volatile organics involved. And there's been sort of a switch. So when you use a VOC paint, for example, one that's just a standard, you go to the paint store, you buy a paint, this thing's going to be like hit you in your face. It's going to smell really bad, but it will break down faster than some of the low VOC paints, where the low VOC paints don't hit you in the face. They're not as obtrusive. You don't smell them as much, but they linger for a longer duration of time based on the chemical compounds that are in them. So you have to be really buyer beware, and understand that sometimes things aren't what you get. And aren't what they seem to be. Doesn't mean that a low VOC paint is bad. You just have to understand there are trade-offs to all these things. And from what the laboratories have been showing us, that, just because something isn't smelling as strong doesn't mean that it's not there.
So what can we do? Are there like air filters, machines that we can buy? Like what can we do to make the air quality inside our house less toxic?
Well, I think you want to start with, again, only buy what you need. Don't store things like personal care products, tons of shampoo, soaps. Women, we're notorious for our lotions, our soaps, our perfumes, hair dye, whatever it is. You keep those bottles in your house, they continue to outgas even though they're sealed. You think something's sealed, you put it in a cabinet, they're still in the environment. So don't store what you don't need. This is good for a simplistic life, right? So keep what you need. Don't store a lot of extra. Don't store a lot of cleaners. Try to stay away from things that these disinfectant wipes that have become very popular lately are highly, highly, highly full of volatile organic compounds. So you need to not use a lot of those. Use, your basic essentials. Vinegar and water works great. Baking soda. You can get a lot of great non-toxic products, on different websites now. So try to stay with unscented things is really key. The scents are not good for you. So try to avoid them at all costs. Try to go more unscented. And that's like a simple thing you can do. Unscented detergents, unscented soaps. Those things will help you tremendously just reduce your volatile organic load, and it's just avoid the scent.
What about products like Febreze? How toxic are these not cleaners but like air fresheners? How toxic are those?
Well, you have to, I don't like to, badmouth a product because it's not fair to somebody else who may like that product or may use that product. Products can have a good and a bad quality to them. What you have to avoid, again, are these extra fragrances, okay? Anything that has an extra fragrance is adding to that VOC load. That VOC load puts pressure on your immune system and on your air quality. So you want to try to reduce those VOCs, and these things like, these products we're talking about, these cleaning products have a lot of VOCs in them besides other chemical compounds. So, read your labels, and if there's something on there that you can't understand, ask somebody, or use something where the product is just simply what it is. If you're using vinegar, hydrogen peroxide, I can't speak highly of it enough. When it breaks down, you're just getting, basic ingredients that come from hydrogen peroxide. So you're not getting anything toxic. You can use that to clean your sinks, your countertops, your toilets, and you're not leaving behind any residue or any toxic overloading product like you do with something like a chlorinated, with a chlorine bleach. So you can use hydrogen peroxide, you can use vinegar, you can use basic mild soaps and things like that, cleaning agents, non-toxic dish detergent.
For those who don't know how to use, baking soda, vinegar, and hydrogen peroxide, how do we use that for cleaning? Like, how do you use hydrogen peroxide for cleaning?
Well, hydrogen peroxide you can use straight. Like, so if you want to do your toilet, for example, I use it, anything that's not going to, hydrogen peroxide will take out color. So you can't use it on anything where you're going to remove a color. But if you use it on a ceramic sink, ceramic countertops, you can use it in your shower. You just spray it down. You want to leave it on for about, a couple minutes, and then you just wipe it away. And it's really easy. If you forget to wipe it away, it's not going to hurt anybody. So it's kind of a good product to use. And it's great for toilet bowls, for all kinds of disinfection. When hospitals use what's called peracetic acid, they combined, hydrogen peroxide, and they combined it with actually vinegar to make a basically antibacterial agent. So these things are very powerful, and they're pretty benign. So you can use them to your heart's content. Vinegar, I usually cut it 50-50, half put in a spray bottle, and then you can spray all kinds of surfaces. You can do wood, you can do sinks, countertops, any kind of cooking boards. It works great as a disinfectant, your microwave, whatever you have in your kitchen, windows it's great for. So you can really use these things kind of interchangeable.
And I'm thinking about cleaning products. Is there like a brand or brands that you hands down love? Like, laundry detergent. I know Tide is so toxic, and yet it gets the stains out. And I,
right.
So I don't use Tide, but man, is there like a brand that you say, like Seventh Generation? This is a fantastic cleaner.
Seventh Generation makes a great line of products. I'd recommend them. There's another company called sunanearth.com. That's who I use. I love their laundry detergents. They've got a whole unscented line, dish detergent. You can pick. They also have a citrus. But I'd be, again, be cautious about the fragrances, because citrus, again, volatile organic. Just because it's natural doesn't mean that it doesn't add to your volatile organic load. So if you are, if you're immune compromised, if you have any kind of health conditions, try to stay with the fragrance-free stuff. So Sun and Earth makes a great product. There's another website, ecogeeks.com. They have some great OxyBoost products, which are oxygenated, products for cleaning. They've got a great deck and patio cleaner that I love, especially if you have to do outside projects. Has no odor, no smell, and it's just oxygenated. Basically, I think it's hydrogen peroxide based. But ecogeeks.com, Sun and Earth, 7th Generation, they're all really, good. And they're vegetable, plant-based detergents. That's the thing too. We're not just doing this for our own health, but the health of the planet. And when you use synthetic detergent, you're putting petroleum-based product all over your clothes. So, you're using things that have benzene, carcinogens, especially dryer sheets, all of that. There was a study done out of Canada where they basically did we measured the gases coming off of dryer vents and what people were exposed to. And unfortunately, it was a lot of toxins and carcinogens to boot. So that's why you want to use plant-based detergents. You don't want to subject yourself, especially on your laundry or clothes. Your skin is your largest bodily organ. Whatever you put on your skin absorbs within seconds into your bloodstream. I mean, literally seconds. Mm-hmm. So everything you put on that body, you really have to be cognizant of what it is. And if you want to make that choice to put it on your skin. And you have to remember that's going directly into your bloodstream.
Absolutely. And if you want to test that out, NDs, naturopathic doctors, take iodine and put it on the skin, and they measure how long it takes for the iodine to disappear, like the coloring to diminish, because it's the body is absorbing the iodine. If you're really iodine deficient, the body will absorb it quicker.
Take it. Mm-hmm.
It just sucks it right in. My mom always used to say, never buy cream, like face cream, with perfumes because it's cheap. She always believed the most expensive, the most highest quality face creams were without perfume because the skin doesn't need chemicals. So your face doesn't need to smell like perfume. Now,
and we put so much of it on our body. I mean, in this country, I mean, we really and women, we're forced to say like, okay, well, this is beautiful because you have these toxic nails, and this is beautiful because you've got long, beautiful hair with keratin and dye and color and straightener, and then you've got to have skin. So now people put on tanner and all kinds of moisturizer and scrubs, and all of this stuff is just laden with all kinds of chemicals. And even if you're doing, like I said, natural things, you still have to remember natural things add up. And you just really need to be selective about what you're using. And look, I'm all for dyeing your hair if you want to. But if that's going to be the thing that you choose to focus on, then try to minimize something else. Maybe don't get your nails done, have your hair dyed and forego the nails. So you really do have to be cognizant. People will try to sell you whatever they can sell you to make you think something's good. And unfortunately, you have to be your own advocate as to what you're putting on your body.
Dr. Megan Saunders, who I've had on the show before, told me that she came back from a continuing education conference all about environmental pollutants and pollutants in the home. And she said she learned a new word, obesogens. Have you heard this word be used in association with the off-gassing the chemicals in our home?
Well, what they're talking about is what are called semi-volatile organics. So we talked about VOCs, the chemicals that come off your personal care products and your building materials, but we also have what are called semi-volatiles, which are like SVOC. And some of these SVOCs can act like endocrine disruptors, and they're chemicals that sort of disrupt the endocrine system, and they can cause a release of hormones in the body that orchestrate different functions. So the body sees this semi-volatile and it thinks, oh, I'm supposed to do this or that, and it starts doing the wrong thing. And a lot of the issues with semi-volatiles is they're found around the original product. So say they're in bedding or, let's just use a bed example. But then they get into the air around that product, and then they're in the air, and then they start to condense on indoor surfaces, and they can be found in house dust. We've done studies where they've captured they've done challenges with pumps, and they've captured like different semi-volatiles on things that it was away from the source. So the source was over here, and these things have now gone into other places. And they don't just dissipate, they sort of stay there. So that's these endocrine, or as you want to say, the obesity issue. They're able to manipulate our bodies and fool our bodies into doing things that they're not supposed to do. So yes, they can be highly problematic, and they're being studied more and more, actually.
It's amazing, and it's very scary. Do you know what kind of common products contain these obesogens?
It's kind of difficult. It's not like they can be in like a lot of different things. So it's not as commonplace as like with VOCs. I can tell you they're in this, that, and the other thing. But, obviously these flame retardants have been an issue. These are sort of semi-volatiles. Also, the bedding we talked about. So you just have to be cognizant about, again, what you're bringing into your home and, where it comes from and what it is. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I mean, nowadays with this flame retardant issue, they've really, California basically set the standard that they're not going to be using flame retardant in furniture anymore moving forward. And a lot of the massive, furniture makers now have labels that are saying, this couch or this love seat is in standard with California. Which is good. So they've started removing a lot of these things, which we know can end up in the body. Mm-hmm. And, because think about it, because if it's ending up in the air next to that product, it's ending up in your body as well, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. Now, the website, Environmental Working Group, ewg.org, do you recommend that as a source for good information about different products?
They do. They do a lot of product analysis, which is really great. And I know a lot of people, I don't personally recommend them. I mean, they're a great website. They're fine. Definitely go there and gather the information that you can. But a lot of the things that I do are associated, again, like I work a lot with, the physicians, and I work a lot with the Indoor Air Quality Association. We actually just started a new public education committee to sort of educate people about these issues, because they're just, so prevalent. And I can't stress it enough that a lot of these things that ail us, a majority of them, and a very large majority of them, are environmentally based. And I don't think that we've been trained. I talk about the Little House on the Prairie episode all the time. You'll hear me do interviews, and I bring it back to Doc Baker, because back in the day, a doctor used to visit you in your home, and he could really get a good analysis as to what was going on with you, whether it was maybe an alcoholic was in the home. Maybe it was a psychological issue. Maybe somebody was using drugs. Maybe the conditions in the home were poor. You can see a lot by seeing where a person lives and how they operate. And these aren't things that you should ever be ashamed of, but they're not things you would ever tell a doctor. Like if you're not cleaning your home and you're not vacuuming 3 times a week, you're not going to tell your physician that, nor are they going to ask you, are you cleaning your home properly? So, and a lot of people don't know that they live with clutter, or they don't know, or they can't see that they have a lot of dust, or that they have a mold issue. So it's not that people are doing something wrong. They don't know that they have that issue to even tell a doctor or physician. But when you visit someone's home, you really get a good understanding. And over 16 years, I've seen a lot of homes, and I've seen how people live. And I can tell you that a majority of the people don't live in healthy conditions. And that doesn't matter. That ranges from so many variables of economics. Like people think, oh, well, this is, an inner city issue. It's not. I see people who are very wealthy and live in the utmost, could live in the best conditions possible to man, and they don't live healthy. So it's something across the board that affects all of us. We don't really know how to live. It's something we need to be educated about, and what is healthy. And that's my job. It's to bring this to light and to say, look, just because you have money, you don't have money, socioeconomic, it doesn't matter. You can live in an unhealthy house no matter where you are. So it's important for people to really recognize it affects all of us. Nobody is really void from it unless you really know how to live healthy and what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Molly Niedermeyer shared with us before that in one of actually a video we made with her, where she explained that there's foundations of health that she helps her patients with achieve first before she moves on to any kind of intervention, because she's like, why am I going to give you a prescription if you're not drinking enough water? Most of the time.
Absolutely.
Something as simple as you're dehydrated, and it's causing all this backlash. I'm not going to give you a drug. We're going to get you drinking enough water first and see if your body can heal itself. She says you're only as healthy as the environment you live in. If you are living in an emotionally toxic environment, then that is affecting every area of your life. And she's like, I'm not going to give you a drug. You're not going to come to me with symptoms. And the symptoms are actually because you're depressed because you live in a toxic relationship, or your house is right beside the freeway and you're breathing in, you don't realize it, but you're breathing in all the pollution.
Right. Particulate.
Yeah, exactly. So in that case, she looks at, and she makes very clear that naturopaths, when you go see them, your initial consultation is about 90 minutes with the average naturopath, because they really want to learn what is the environment that you're living in, emotional, mental, physical, spiritual. They want to make sure that the symptoms that you're having aren't just in the physical realm, that they want to make sure they're handling everything. But yeah, she stresses that you're only as healthy as the environment you live in. And I'm just imagining there's so much we just take for granted, or so much we just don't know. That's in our home, and you can clearly see it because you've been doing it for so long. So there's mold, there's these off-gassing issues, there's the cleaners, the daily things that we use, the soaps and shampoos, and even makeup can be highly toxic. I only use 100% pure mineral makeup by Longevity, because it's like the only makeup line I ever have found that has zero chemicals added. It's 100% mineral. But then we get into what is very new, if we think about it, only in the last 10, 20 years, Wi-Fi signals, cell phone signals, cell phone towers. Have you ever dealt with electromagnetic pollution, Wi-Fi pollution, people living under power lines? Has that ever come into consideration? So what do you see in terms of symptoms or sickness, and how do you help those people?
I had a client, it's so ironic. I had a client call me. Now, I had a problem in my own home, and I'm not an EMF specialist, but I'm aware that they can cause, magnetic fields and different dirty electricity can cause problems. So I'll get back to that. But in a minute, I had a client that called me yesterday, and he said, I've talked to so many doctors. I was referred to you. Nobody knows why. I'm a healthy, vibrant. I exercise all the time. I moved into this new apartment and I'm getting dizzy. And just to me, when I hear that, dizzy, a healthy person, it triggers this EMF. And I said, look, this is not my specialty, but I'm going to tell you, you need to evaluate whether you have any smart meters or any kind of electrical interference that could be causing a problem in your home. And I said, it's getting more and more common, unfortunately, and especially in apartments, if you live in a complex where you've got a lot. So he said, okay, I'll check into it. I'll call you back. So he called me today, actually, and he said, you have made such a difference. Oh, and I told him to move his bed. I said, move your bed to the other side. Just complete sleep on the different side of the house from where you are. So he said, all my symptoms went away. I moved my bed. I come to find out he had an elevator shaft with an elevator that wasn't working properly on one side of his bedroom. On the other side of his bedroom, he had the wall of smart meters.
Oh my
gosh. We're safe to assume that somewhere there was electrical interference between the magnetic fields and was causing a problem to him. And the reason that I know more than I know is because in my own home, we were experiencing a buzzing, like a low frequency buzzing. And certain people in the house could hear it. I couldn't hear it. And it was becoming annoying. So I actually hired somebody in my field who works with me, and that's his specialty. He's really good at doing this. And he might be an interesting guest to have on the show because he's, knows a lot about it. He worked for an electrical company for years and years. And I had him come to my house, and we have some wires that are actually crossed that, people do sort of hatchet jobs when they're doing their wiring, and they share feed lines and branch off to other things, which they're not supposed to do. And it creates fields. So we actually have like a field in the middle of the living room, and he's going to be coming back in a couple of weeks, and we're going to try to rectify it by fixing the wiring. But it's so common. And, just the Wi-Fi, everything, the laptops, when you sit next to these things, the amount of power that they put off. And if you have a house like mine where it wasn't wired properly, it was a very, shared wiring going on. And then you put these big televisions on it, you put your Wi-Fi, your laptop computers, it actually exemplifies, it adds to that field and makes the field even more powerful, and makes the effect of that television, where you normally would just have the field in front of the TV, expand out much further. So you've got to make sure the houses are wired properly. And that gets us into a whole other avenue with, my background is in sustainable design and building. And I had to go back to school to learn about proper building construction, because all of these things that we're talking about today really impact how your house is built. And that's when we get into like the green building issue, or just building in general. We've got so much going on in a house now that, these types of wiring issues and things are happening because we never had this much technology. We didn't have this much wiring. We didn't have the electric dog fence. We didn't have home security systems. All of this is just a field of energy that's surrounding the house. Mm-hmm. And he told me an interesting story, which I found fascinating, was that this woman, she decided, well, I'm done with this EMF. I'm going to go build myself a home. And she went, I think it was like New Hampshire, and she built this home, and she did it green, but she used foil and solar panels, and she actually made her house into a huge magnetic field. So she went to try to build green, and she actually built this environment that was completely EMF toxic.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that crazy? I was like, oh my God, we're not safe anywhere.
Like, do we have to live in Faraday cages? Like what?
Yeah, live in the woods. I don't know. But again, we're getting so ahead of ourselves, Ashley. Like what's happened is we've got all this technology, and a lot of this stuff is really great. Look, we can talk on Skype because of this wonderful technology and spread news that we couldn't do this before. So there's benefits, but the problem is there are no barriers or filters or loopholes or checkpoints. I guess checkpoints is a greater word to making sure these things are healthy. They're just, we're inundated with it, and we just don't know what the health effects are. And unfortunately, we're going to learn probably later, and it should be sooner, that these things are going to be very toxic for us, I think.
When they first came out with the X-ray machine, it was like so popular, so exciting that they had them in shoe stores. And you could go in and put, try on 10 different pairs of shoes and X-ray your feet in every single pair of shoes to see if the shoes fit.
That's right. I remember that. I remember hearing that. And
then they figured out that it was causing cancer because X-ray is radiation. So, and that was an example. And of course, as humans, we're doomed to repeat our history over and over again, because apparently we don't learn things from generation to generation. But we're doing it again. We come out with a new technology, and before we really know if it's safe or not, we're running with it. And so now we're being exposed to the EMF radiation and to Wi-Fi and especially cell phones. I'm never within 10 feet of my cell phone, so I'm not sure what's gonna happen there, but we have all this and we don't know what's going on, and then we have all of these health effects, symptoms, and one thing that you had mentioned before we started the interview is that a common symptom you see in clients is chronic fatigue. So you have clients who don't know why they're tired, but they're always tired, or mostly always tired, and this is actually can be a result of environmental pollution in their home.
Correct. And it can be, from things like we just talked about, EMFs. And also you have to remember dirty electricity, right? So you may be not using these things, but if you're in a home, your neighbors share wires with you. Whatever they're using actually comes into your home as well. So even if you're not subjecting yourself to it, you may be subjected just based on the fact of proximity. And we found that with our own home, that whatever our neighbors were using, it's measuring up in our home. So that's we're all in this together. And even though some people may say, well, I'm not doing this or I'm not doing that, but you're really subjected to it because everybody else is subjecting you to it. Mm-hmm. So that's why I think that we need some sort of communal response to all being a little more cognizant about the fact that these things aren't tested. But yes, chronic fatigue, a lot of these things like fibromyalgia and these undescript things, a lot of them can definitely be environmental. If you are sick, if you have any kind of chronic condition and you don't have answers, whether it's headaches or, any kind of just stuff that nobody's really putting their finger on, you need to look at your home. You need to look at all these different things that could possibly and potentially be in your home. And, either you seek out someone like myself, there's other inspectors out there as well. You need to really get an overview. And usually what I recommend to my clients is I said, look, if a budget is an issue, do one test a year. So 1 year you do mold, 1 year you do water, 1 year you do volatile organics, 1 year you do formaldehyde, 1 year you do, radon. And And then it's not so overwhelming. And then, you're constantly checking your house. And a lot of these things, once you do a test, you don't need to repeat it, for 3 to 5 years. So, but mold is very important. Mold is I always say every 3 to 5 years, you should be doing a mold test. You can't see a lot of the things that are going on under the showers, the bathrooms, the toilets, in the flooring, in the walls. You're just not privy to it. If you see it, you're lucky, because then you can really address it. But if you don't see it, that's why you need to do the mold test every 3 to 5 years to just see what's going on.
You mentioned testing water. When I lived in Vegas, there were times when we could smell jet fuel in our water.
Oh, God, that's awful.
Our tap water, our city tap water, smelled like there was, jet fuel leaking into it. It was very interesting. And I took samples of our water and sent them out for testing. And then we also had a reverse osmosis, just for drinking water, it wasn't for the whole house. So when we showered, we would be breathing in everything.
Right. And this is what's interesting is, and this is what we talked about with the skin, you actually absorb a very, well, not a small percentage. I think it's like 11% of the chemicals when you're drinking chlorine or anything that's in the water. But when you shower in it, you absorb much more through your skin. So people will say, well, I don't drink the water. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Are you showering in it? And they're like, yes. I said, you're absorbing so much. Your whole body is absorbing that in. So in that case is a perfect example. You may have been doing something for the drinking water, but you were probably getting much more exposure from the shower.
And we, just in the last year, there have been so many cases where cities have found toxic levels of substances in their water, like Flint, Michigan. Or when we travel to other countries like Mexico, we don't know what's going on. But just in our backyard, like I said, living in Vegas, I sent my water out for testing, and it was 800. It was like in the 800 range for particles in the water. Which was crazy. And because our reverse osmosis water was something like 60 particles. And it was just all of the stuff, the chemicals in the water. So I'm just curious, have you seen illnesses from, chlorine, fluoride, or from water issues?
Of course. And the thing, I encourage people to pick up, there was a cancer report done in 2009. It was a presidential cancer report. It's public information. Anybody can get it. And basically they assigned, doctors to research carcinogens. And if you look at this list, all these things that we're talking about right now, and this is public information, people would rather, watch TV and zone out. But this stuff is right out there for anybody to find. And it talks about the carcinogens, as we discussed. And the big ones on the list talks about cell phones, talks about the medical care profession, what we're using to treat illness being carcinogenic, and it talks about trihalomethanes. And trihalomethanes are what we're talking about with water. When you have a chlorination system, chlorine sort of breaks down along the process and produces trihalomethanes, sort of like if you're closer to the plant, you'll have a stronger chlorine presence. If you're further away from the plant, wherever you get your water, you'll have more trihalomethanes. That's usually how it works. It's not always that way, but predominantly that's what we find. These things are carcinogenic, and we're based on the water treatment and what we use in this country for water treatment because of the cheapness of, chlorination and the fact that we have to go wider distances, and the chlorination works better than treatments like ozone that are more predominant in Europe. We see, that this is one of the issues, and it is carcinogenic and has the potential to, in my opinion, a lot of this breast cancer stuff that's happening again, this is my opinion. I think we can take it back to this chlorination, and we really need to look at it. But again, this cancer report is for everybody to see. And I encourage people, if you ever are interested, they put the best doctors on it. This information's out there. It was presented to the president of the United States, and it's there. But, we just don't look at that. We'd rather watch the Kardashians or something.
Not my listeners. My listeners are learning from you right now. Absolutely. If we can get a link to that, I'll put it in the show notes for the podcast. I really want to make sure that we can get that information out there. Okay, so let's say someone goes, holy crap, I have, carcinogens in my tap water, and I'm bathing in it, and my children are breathing it in when they shower. I want to change this. I don't, but I live in the city. What does someone do? What would you tell them as a client? Do they put filters on their taps? Do they get what do they do?
Okay, so first you test your water because you want to know what your baseline is. And some people have high trihalomethanes, some people don't. So you want to look at, where am I at? Some people have well water, I have well. You want to look at all your chemicals. And we really want to keep water as pure as we can, right? That's the goal. So you don't really want to have to add treatment systems and things like that if you don't have to.
Is the water testing kit on your website?
Mm-hmm, yes, okay, so people can order, and we do all kinds of homeexpert.com. And we do all kinds of testing from, your pH, your leads, your arsenics, things like that, to radiologicals. A lot of people, depending on regions of the country where you live, you get things like radon that follow the water up, but then you also get radiologicals in the water, which are very important to test for, like uranium and different things like that. So you could test for those. And then there's volatile organics and pesticides, all kinds of things. But you want to get a baseline on where your water is. And you want to see, okay, what can I adjust, or what's way out of kilter here and isn't good? Do I have arsenic? Do I have lead? And this is where the Flint, Michigan thing comes in, is that for 16 years, I've been telling my clients, look, the water that you get out of your tap, just because the public water group that you're using or the company that's doing your public water says it's okay, doesn't mean that the water you're actually getting at your tap is what's leaving their facility. And I've been saying this, that's why it surprises me that people are so shocked about Flint, because for 16 years I've been saying, look, test your water. I don't care where you are. You need to know exactly what's coming into your home at that particular place in time. So you test it, you see what your baseline is. If you are concerned about chlorination, you have to remember that you are going to absorb predominantly most of this through your skin. So you're probably going to have to invest in a whole house system, probably an RO system to get that type of thing out, depending on how high, how low it is. Some people don't really have a lot of chlorine in their water. It really depends on the treatment system and where you are on that line. So that's why it's important to test it, to find out what it is, and then try to work to accommodate, what you need to fix.
Do water filters work? Those Brita water filters, do they really do anything?
No, but Brita, I wouldn't,
as an example, those like Soma water filter, Brita, like the little like.
I think they work for particulate and things like that. I don't know how well they're going to work against chlorine or charcoal filter, I think. But but water system, there are systems out there in general that work very well, and you can get reverse osmosis systems. There's a lot of different treatment that actually work very, very, very well.
Do you have a brand that you really like or recommend?
No, I really don't. What you really need is a good water treatment person. And we do have, in the tri-state area, when you call us, we do have recommendations for people who do that for a business. You really need to have a really excellent water treatment person, because there is a lot of stuff that can go wrong in water treatment that you don't want in your water too. So there's side effects to doing treatment. So that's the key, is to finding someone who's really knowledgeable about water treatment. And there are people out there who just do that.
Is there a national certification that someone should look for?
I think there is, and I can get it for you. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I believe that there is, yes.
Okay, great. Man, I'm thinking, you just reminded me, Yakima is an area in Washington State, eastern Washington, where a lot of farming is. And there's a specific area where during a certain season, there's so much spraying of the crops that the women in that area have a much, much, much higher birth defect and miscarriage rate.
Horrible.
And we're afraid of the Zika virus, right, affecting our pregnant women.
And then we're spraying more pesticide to deal with that. It's like, well, okay, so we don't want to get the virus, but then we're going to spray a bunch of chemicals that are going to be carcinogenic. But, people have to remember, everybody makes a difference. Stop using pesticides and chemicals on your lawn. You don't need it, especially if you have a lawn space. There's lots you can do. I have quite a bit of land, and we reseed every year, and you can do things like lime, and you can do natural fertilizer. You do not need to use pesticide or chemicals to have a beautiful lawn. And we have one of the nicest in our neighborhoods, and we use nothing but natural things. Okay. So you just have to compensate. If you're going to have a lot of weeds, you've got to reseed more frequently so that the grass overtakes the weeds instead of the weed overtaking the grass. Try to, people need jobs, we always talk about the economy. Look, hire someone to weed your lawn. If you don't weed your landscape, don't spray pesticide, don't use Roundup, get out there yourself. It's good exercise. If you can't do it, then find somebody, we hire someone who's retired and he needs to make some side money and he does our lawn. So, there's ways to go about it. But when you're using these items, we bought a house, I guess it was about 5 years ago. And, I'm assuming that the homeowner before us was using something. And we started to notice all these toads. And I said, wow, why do we have all these toads? Like, where are they coming from? And I never knew much about toads. So I started researching them. And toads come in your yard when the environment is pristine and good.
Wow.
And they breathe through their skin for survival. So when you put pesticide on your lawn, you kill these toads. Toads, and I never knew this, from April to November will ingest 10,000 insects per toad.
Whoa!
So you want to talk about how to kill Zika virus. If we stopped using pesticides and killing the toads, the increase of toads would help kill the bug population. Mm-hmm. So here, the toads offer great economic and biological benefit to our gardens, and they keep the bug population down.
Yeah.
And I never knew that, so I don't really, I don't store gasoline on my property. I don't store, obviously I don't keep cars in the garage. I don't store a lot of that stuff, and obviously don't use any pesticide. And it took about 5 years. I'd say it was like 5. And these toads started coming like crazy. I'm like, where are they coming from? And then I started reading about them, and they're fascinating. And they breathe through their skin. So they're only going to come and be able to survive where places are really pristine and good. So my yard must be A-okay.
Wow.
So I encourage people to really, try to really remain, vigilant, stop using that stuff, especially residential. We use enough of it for commercial industry, and we do need a portion of it for that because we need food. And we do need to have some sort of protection for our crops. And, even organic stuff, like I said, natural stuff doesn't mean it's good either, but we do need a percentage of it for agriculture. So to me, why use it in residential? And there was a community, I think in Maryland, my friend was telling me that they actually were they passed an ordinance that they were no longer going to be able to use pesticide in the city ordinance. No residential anymore, which I thought was fabulous. And I think they're trying to overturn it now, but I think that's great. We don't need to be using it on residential. We use enough of it in commercial applications.
Oh, absolutely. I live on 5 acres, and half of it is lawn. Because I guess at one point our property was sort of a farm, so there's just a lot of lawn. And when we moved in, my husband was like, well, we got to go get some kind of
weed killer.
We need some weed killer. And I'm like, there's no way we're putting weed killer on 5 acres of land. You've got to be kidding me. I'm not gonna have 5 acres of toxin in my backyard. If it can kill a weed, what is it going to do to us? And at that point in time, I was growing beets, and I had, a little organic, raised bed. I had 2 organic raised beds, and my husband wants to spray, 5 acres worth of. I'm like, no, we just mow the lawn more or something.
But this is what people do. They don't, people move out from the city, right? So I live more out where it's rural.
Yep.
And they come out and they think, oh my gosh, this is what I got to do. And it's not a, they're trying to kill us, but they're just not, they think this is what has to be done. They don't realize you reseed, you cut the grass, you can grow vegetation, you use manure. They're just not used to doing that. So they think we call a lawn doctor and they are going to come and spray a bunch of chemicals, and that's, it's crazy.
So in terms of pesticides, okay, so don't go out, get a bunch of chemicals to kill your weeds, because there's so many natural options. Plus, I just told my husband, listen, dandelions are pretty, they're flowers, and I convinced him that if you grow dandelions in your backyard, you can actually use them in your use them in your salad. The leaf you can use your salad. It has a liver cleansing, and a blood cleanses the blood. You pay good money at a health food stores to buy dandelion leaves for juicing.
And root too, I think, right? Root, something with the dandelion root.
Yeah, there's something you can do with the whole dandelion plant, and I believe the flower is also used for tea. It's actually euphoric. can help with mood, stabilizing mood and enlightening mood. So yeah, there's a lot of good health benefits. Like I told him, listen, dandelions aren't weeds, they're herbs. Let it grow, let it grow. But yeah, it's totally the city mentality. It's like, oh, I don't want my neighbors to hate me because I have dandelions and it's going to then infect their lawn, and then you're
Well, that's what happens. It's the keeping up with the Joneses, and then what happens is somebody starts spraying, and look, if you want to keep the weeds out, you got to keep the grass up. So you've got to reseed more frequent. It's common sense, right? If you have too many weeds, they overtake the grass, they kill the grass. So if you want to have more seed, or more grass, you need more seed, and you need to plant more grass, and you got to reseed frequently because otherwise.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so don't use the stuff for the weeds. And then what about pests? Like, what about, would you have any natural ways? So if someone's like, oh my God, there's so many spiders.
Okay. So this brings us to a good point. When one of my clients says, I've got spiders, I've got, silverfish, I have, what's the other good one ladybugs. Ladybugs are a really good one. But that tells me right away. You tell me you have spiders, you have ladybugs, you have water infiltration. They're just like us, just like molds. They're like people. They need food, they need air, they need water. And when you have water infiltration, you're going to have mold, you're going to have dust mites, and you're going to have bugs. So when you start to see bugs, start to look for water sources. They need these things to survive. So typically when I have a house where they have a lot of complaints, there usually is like a dampness issue or whatever. So start to look at that. Do not use pesticide in the home ever. Do not use it inside the home. It is hard to get rid of. These things have very long lifespans and do not break down, because you need the sun and the air and ventilation to break down these pesticides in general. Things like chlordane have been applied in, 1970s to, actually, I think it went back to 1940 to I think it was 1980s. These things are still in people's homes. I've tested homes for chlordane. They make people sick. I had a child who had a very, very rare disease, and they had chlordane exposure in the home. And it was from years and years and years ago. It was coming up through the foundation. So you don't want to use these things. If you do have pests, look into finding what their source is and cutting off that source. And typically it's usually water. So you've got a damp, like I have a walkout basement. So I'll tend to get some spiders. I mean, nothing crazy, but some, because it's just that dampness, that condensation. So you use a dehumidifier, you heat the space. When you want low relative humidity, right? So usually what I recommend to people is go out, get a temperature gauge. You should always have this in your home, temperature gauge and a relative humidity monitor. And the reason you want that, you want to put that in the lowest level of your house, typically your basement, but some people might have like a walkout basement or slab. And you want to monitor that. You do not want relative humidity above 50, 55%. Once it gets over that, you're going to have dust mites, you're going to have mold, and you're going to have bugs. So what you have to do is reduce that relative humidity. And this is one of the simplest things you can do and one of the best tricks for any homeowner. Get a relative humidity monitor, get temperature. And you want to keep that relative humidity very low, not under 30. If you're in a dry place, if you get too low and you go under 30, then you start to get dried out sinus passages, and you also get more frequent colds because you need that protection in your sinuses. So get this, put it in your basement, watch it. If it starts to go up, you need a dehumidifier. And the way relative humidity works, it's kind of tricky and it's a science thing. And I don't like to bore people, but it's really imperative that you know this if you're a homeowner. Relative humidity works with temperature. So when people think, oh, it's humid, it's hot, they associate humidity with being hot, which is really a misconception. Doesn't exist. What happens is, so say I'm in say you have 3 stories in your house and you have a basement, a first floor, and a second floor, and I'm up on the second floor, and the temperature is 80 degrees up there. And I take out my little relative humidity monitor. It's going to be about 40% relative humidity. Relative humidity, the higher the temperature, the hotter it is, the relative humidity goes down in your home. When you walk down, now you go down the stairs, you're walking down the stairs, get to the basement. Now you look at your relative humidity monitor. The temperature now down in the basement is 65 degrees. And you say, oh my gosh, 65. And then you look at the relative humidity and it's 80%. That 80% means bugs, dust mites, mold. So the higher the temperature, if you heat that space. So now say I'm down in the space and it's 65 degrees, it feels comfortable to me. but my relative humidity is too high. If I want to drop my relative humidity, I add heat. So I heat that space up, make it real toasty, and the relative humidity goes down. So, but anyway, the problem with basements is that we get these cold temperatures, which hold a lot of moisture in the air that pushes that relative humidity up. And that's why you get the bugs, the dust mites, and the mold. So if you keep relative humidity in your home on every level between 30 and 50%, you're going to have a lot less problems and you're going to have a really healthy house. So that's an easy thing to do, simple. Go to Home Depot, go to Lowe's, whatever whatever local hardware store, get yourself a monitor, $12. Don't spend a lot of money on it. It's just a simple monitor and put it in your basement and monitor your relative humidity. And if you notice consecutively that you are over 60%, you need a dehumidifier or you need to heat the space. And that will help you keep mold down. It prevents basements from getting musty. It helps if you have a finished basement. It'll last you a lot longer if you control the relative humidity. It's awesome.
Wow, thank you. So that's the humidity that we need to pay attention to. And you were talking about there was two kinds of humidity, or was I mistaken?
No, so it's called relative humidity, or RH, they call it. And you want to keep that RH between 30 and 50% to keep bugs, dust mites, and mold at bay. So you want that really that's like a healthy home guideline. So relative humidity should be between 30 and 50%. And then also temperature should really be under 70 degrees to keep dust mites down. But when you start to get too cold, then your relative humidity will go up. So it's a fine line that you walk there. But, especially dust mites, when things get hot, like people always think, oh, I have more dust mites in the winter. But you really don't. You get a lot more of them in the summer because with the high humidity and the high temperature, dust mites proliferate and they start breeding. So you get a lot of dust mites, and then these dust mites put off proteins, and those proteins cause allergens. So that's why people, we get all these things in our home because a lot of it's moisture. But remember, molds are just like people. They need food, air, water. So they want to feed on things and live. And if you can cut off their sources and not give them a life support, they're not going to live there.
Now, you said vacuum the house 3 times a week. You kind of just said that while we were having an earlier discussion. I've never heard that before, to vacuum that often.
Yeah, you really need to. Well, especially it depends on your traffic. So we shed dander just like pets do. We always blame pets, right? Pets get blamed for pet proteins and dander, which definitely contribute to allergies, but we drop dander as well. And what happens when we drop dander, the more people you have in the house, the more dander, then the more dust mites feed on that dander. So the way to really keep that down is you have to use a HEPA vacuum, and you have to be vacuuming frequently, especially if you have kids. You've got more people in your, residence. So the more people you have, the more frequent you have to vacuum. My rule of thumb, it's going to sound crazy, but if you count the number of people in your house, and that's how many times a week you have to vacuum. And so it keeps it easy.
Does that include pets?
Now, if you have, pets are people. So pets get lumped in. So yes. And the thing with pets, which more so than just dander, it's their proteins. And so if you have people who have asthma, allergies, any kind of autoimmune problems, I love animals. Okay. I'm an animal lover. I do love them, but unfortunately their proteins can really cause a lot of inflammation in people that have chronic illness. So you have to be really cognizant about these proteins and that they do, can play a part in your immune system. So, my recommendation personally is if you do have autoimmune issues that you should stay away from pets in the home. And I know people don't like to say that because the psychological portion of the pet is wonderful, but the inflammation caused by these proteins is very affected on the body. And, people go, well, I'm not stuffy and I'm not sneezy. You don't need to be. The inflammation doesn't know where to go in your body. It doesn't just say, I'm going to your nose. It affects you systemically. Mm-hmm. So, you'll hear a lot of people sometimes say, I have achy joints all the time. I just don't feel good in my home. I'm achy. That's a lot of inflammation. It's just generalized inflammation. And then when we look at the home, we notice they've got pet proteins, they've got dust mite proteins, they have peanut protein. So all of these things cause inflammation in the body. And it's not to say that we want you to live in a bubble, because that's not what I want for people. But I want you to be cognizant about what you're bringing in, be selective, and say, okay, I know this is going to impact my health. So where can I bend and maybe not do something? It's a give and take. There's no I'm just going to take on everything in the world and bring it into my house, and it's okay, because it's not.
Right, exactly. And I love what you said, that don't store a bunch of bottles just because they're on sale. Like don't store a ton of
No.
products. I mean, that I am so guilty of that. I have years worth of cleaning supplies
Bad
and oh
girl.
my
Bad
gosh, I
girl.
under every single sink in all, 3 bathrooms, and under the sink in the kitchen. I mean, and in the pantry. I cannot believe how many
And
bottles I'm
see, and
thinking
you're
about.
like the healthy person,
I
right? So
know. I didn't
I
know
know.
they off gassed. I thought they were safe. Oh,
We do
oh my
things,
gosh.
and listen, I'm guilty of it too. We all do things sometimes, and we just don't think about it. Like I had this carpet. I had got this carpet, and it was in the house when I moved in, and a friend of mine had it, and I didn't even think I didn't think twice about it, and I had it in my space, and I was getting headaches for I don't even know a year, and this. It was this carpet. It was this carpet. I took the carpet out and the headaches went away. So it's like we do things, and I'm like,
Oh my
"What, Caroline?
gosh.
Why did you have this carpet in there? You know that people don't live like you. You know that they who knows what was in this carpet and what they used if they wore shoes in the you know what I mean? Like it's
Hmm.
just we do things, and we're I'm in the business and I make mistakes too. But again, the thing is, just don't. It's really, really, really important that you start being more cognizant. And I say this to listeners, you can really improve your health and wellness, general wellness. You will feel a lot better if you start looking at these things. And then you'll start to see correlations. Like you'll say, wow, like I was getting headaches and I had this, or once you start to live cleaner, then you start to realize like when you bring something in, like what it does, and the effect that it can have on you. And that doesn't mean not to have it, but you really have to balance. It's a balancing trick.
Now, furniture. That furniture off gases. You said that recently they've stopped. They're more in compliance with California state laws. They're not using the flame
Flame retardant.
retardants, right?
Mhm.
So, is there a type of furniture you'd recommend people focus on in the future when they go to buy furniture? Should they be buying wood furniture? Should they be buying leather furniture? Should they be buying used furniture? It's like so, antique that it's off gassed already. Like, is there a healthier furniture?
I mean, it's really like you said, like you just put a mouthful in there. So like the antique furniture could be good because it's old, no volatiles, but it could be moldy, right? So have a must. You got to really just use your nose, smell things. If something smells really strong, stay away from it. Try to get real wood, stuff that's natural. Like the bedding I just bought was
Amish.
real. Yeah, Amish, yes, be good.
Amish
Um,
furniture.
all homemade kind of stuff. And there are companies out there. There's a bedding company I like, which is White Lotus. They're out of New Jersey, actually, where we're from. So they have a showroom, and you could go down. And I bought a bed from there, and it was just an all wood. It was stained. I'm going to say, listen, this thing did have to outgas. It did. As natural as you go. Sometimes a lot of these water-based stains, they do smell. So you have to be, cognizant of trying to, if you do buy something, let it outgas or maybe put it out in the sun for a couple days. That's what I usually do, and let it just get de-smelled.
Mm-hmm.
The sun, basically what works against volatiles is time, air, and temperature. So those are the things, like, so ventilation, time, allowing things to bake out. Heat, will make it bake out faster. So those are all important to do. When you buy new things, put it outside when you get it, just leave it out for overnight and just let it air out, so you're not bringing this real smelly thing into your home.
Years ago, 60 Minutes had a spot about the toxic effects of cooking with certain types of pots and pans.
Mm-hmm.
That those with the non-stick surface, the Teflon surface, actually lets off a chemical that can cause flu-like symptoms. And they interviewed a family where their pet parrot passed away. The parrot was on the other side of the kitchen, and of course, thinking of the canary in the coal mine, that miners would bring little canaries in cages down with them, and if there was methane leaking somewhere, if the bird died, then the miners had time to get out before
Mm-hmm.
they were significantly exposed. So, thinking of this. And now, of course, there are more greener approaches. I only cook with like surgical stainless steel, or with those
Or glass.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
glass. Well, even
Mm-hmm.
with glass, what I found out was that Pyrex has lead in it.
Wonderful.
In order for it to not be breakable or whatever. There was, I did a bunch of research about different cooking vessels and what it could off gas or what it could, infiltrate into your food.
Mm-hmm.
And so just thinking about these day-to-day things that we do, like cooking, are there kind of, red flags for you, or like tips that you go, okay, you every day, for example, make coffee, don't make it this way, or make sure that your coffee maker is this kind of coffee maker, or watch for, or do you have sort of these tips that we absolutely wouldn't even be in our awareness to think about, like that our Teflon pans are off-gassing and causing flu-like symptoms because it's toxic?
Well, the thing I think you have to more be aware of is when you're cooking, ventilate. When especially a lot of people are cooking on gas stoves, and there's been a huge correlation between, you're cooking on gas and women having depression.
Oh my gosh.
So you want to be cognizant that's a petroleum-based product that you're using. So the better hood range, the better ventilation. When you get into apartments, sometimes a lot of these gas stoves aren't even ventilated. Mm-hmm. So you really need to make sure you have proper ventilation. That, when you are cooking, open a couple windows in the house. Like I always do, just open windows, get some airflow when you're cooking food, especially if you're cooking on gas. That's the first thing. Don't wear shoes in the house. That is my big rule. Mm-hmm. No shoes in the house. You carry pesticides, petroleum, everything that you step in throughout the day. If you have pets, you got to be cognizant that they go outside and they roll around in the grass, is where you have E. coli and Enterobacter, all those bacteria. So if you can get a paw wiper or something to wipe their paws is very important. Also, people with pets, the protein. So when they pee or they go out and urinate, you want to wipe their privates when they come in, because that protein, especially if you have children who have asthma and allergies, is in their urine, is also in their saliva. So if you can prevent the urine, any particulate from the urine from getting in the air, is very helpful too. And make sure that you do wash your pets frequently. People say, it's not good because of their coat, but unfortunately they pick up pollen and dander, mold toxins, they roll around and all this stuff, and then they bring it and trap it in your carpet. So it's really important to keep your animals clean, just like we are. We have to be clean too. So no shoes in the house. Things like that.
I totally agree with you. I'm Canadian. I don't know if you can tell with my accent, living in the States for the last 10 years. And so many American homes that I enter, I take my shoes off and they look at me like, what are you, crazy?
I know.
I mean, and it's a Canadian thing, and I didn't really know it was like, I thought everyone took off their shoes, but because in Canada we have so much snow and mud for so many months, it's just polite to always take off your shoes and walk around barefoot or in socks. But absolutely, I noticed that in those homes I visited where people left their shoes on, their carpet was much dirtier than those that take their shoes off.
You have to start doing it. The world, you bring in so much debris, volatiles, mold, dust, everything. You just can't be bringing it into your home. You need to keep your shoes as your outside shoes, your inside shoes. You can have inside shoes, they just don't go outside. But just from a mold perspective, when you go out, you pick up mycotoxins and things that these molds put out, and then you can trap that in your carpet, and those things are not healthy. So, it's best not to even have carpet. You want to have hardwood floors or tile or something that's cleanable. But, if you do have carpet, that's even more reason to take your shoes off. But, in Canada, they're much more innovative. A lot of the really good studies come out of Canada. They did one about garages and attached garages, which I really, really like. And they talked about how, non-properly attached garages really produce a lot of volatile organics in our environment. So a lot of my studies and things that I research do come out of Canada, because I think they're much more progressive there.
Well, thank you. Now, speaking of garages, you had mentioned that you don't store your vehicle in your garage. Why is that?
It's because when you turn that vehicle on, all of those gases from the combustible from the engine end up trapped in your airspace. So unless you're using some sort of ventilation system, so in Canada, they recommend that you do put a ventilation system in your garage. So any fumes or anything that would come off your combustibles, your engines, anything you're storing isn't getting into your house. But you should have a shed outside where you store your gasoline, any power equipment, anything that you have. You shouldn't store that in your house. It becomes part of your living space, and it actually gets into your indoor air quality. It's one of the biggest contributors we have to poor indoor air quality is gasoline and things and combustibles that people store in garages. We've seen a lot of children who have learning disabilities, children with ADHD, people, children on the spectrum, autistic children. They've come home since birth and they've been living in bedrooms that were over attached garages. So all those fumes for their entire existence since they were an infant, that car was turned on and all that stuff was going into their environment and they're breathing this in. So, and we see a lot of kids who have trouble concentrating in school. We move their bedroom to the other side of the house where they're not exposed to the constant influx of the, automobiles and everything else they're storing, and their symptoms for concentration and things get better and improve. So it's really important that even though your garage is supposed to be a garage, if it's an attached garage, you really don't want to store these things there. You need to have an outside shed.
Amazing. Now, can you share before we wrap up this fascinating interview, can you share some stories of success that you've had working with your clients over the last, 20 years?
I think what's really amazing is that these testing methods that we use have become so accurate, and I can tell a lot of people will come to me and they'll want to do testing. And then when they get the test back, I say, you're using this product, you're using this, you're using mothballs. And I say, how do you know this? Like, this is crazy. I said, it's in your report. You can't deny that these chemicals are there and certain things. We talk a lot about those disinfection bacterial wipes. I get a lot of clients who are like way overloaded with total volatiles. And I say, look, I can see you're using XYZ wipe. And they say, oh my gosh, they're like, how do you know that? I said, because you're using them too much. You have to stop. They're all throughout your entire, living space. So I've had clients like that. I've had a woman where she was very sick and she wasn't getting better. And she had gone to, a gazillion doctors. And then she ended up with me and she said, something's in my home I need to test. So we tested and it came back that there was gun solvent, the cleaner.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, look, someone in your home has a weapon and they're cleaning this and this gun solvent cleaner is in the air. Well, she was like, no, this was in the beginning of my career. And she's like, no, this can't be. You're wrong. And your information's faulty. So I was really upset, that I told her this in about 2 weeks, and probably 2 weeks went by and she called me up and she said, I just want to apologize to you. And she really let me have it. And I said, that's okay. And she's like, my husband admitted that he has a gun and he's been cleaning it in the bedroom. And I said, that's amazing, and he stopped doing it and she got completely better. And then I've had clients, on the spectrum, like I said, about special needs and how we've helped them and their kids with, focusing school because they had been breathing in all these chemicals in the home. And I have clients who had severe allergies and they moved into homes and they had, obviously amounts of pet dander and pet proteins that were there before they moved in. And we had to remove those. And clients with, severe things like cancer and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I had a client who had a very sick mate, and they, after the person passed away, they said, I'd like to do some testing in my home. I left everything the way it was when they were here. I just want to know what's going on. And sure enough, I went in and tested and found that they had toxic mold and very high levels of volatile organics. And, when you see things like that, you wonder if, the situation could have been prevented if they had tested their home, a lot earlier. So
absolutely,
there's very serious implications of environmental issues in the home. And I want people to test and to know what their home is and how it operates. And then they can understand, how it impacts their health, because our bodies, like we said, our skin breathes. We're not different than the toad, right? So the toad breathes everything in through their skin. Well, our skin absorbs everything too. So we are our environments and our environments are us. And we really need to know what's in them and how they impact us every day. And
I'm sorry. Go on.
No, go ahead. No, that was it.
What I'm thinking is that those who are listening are going to want to buy the test kits. Go to Caroline's website, healthyhomeexpert.com. So they get the test kits. They get the tests, and I'm just putting myself, in their shoes. I want to do it too. And now I'm hit with this sense of overwhelm. I've got all these results, and what if I can't change everything? Or what if I'm a renter? Or what if I'm, in an apartment complex or a condo, and there's just certain things that I can't change. I guess this is where we come to you. We hire you and you tell us what we can change. Are there...
Well, a lot of it is really changeable. I mean, look, if you're living, you signed a lease and then you get in and your lease says, I mean, and we deal with this all the time. People come back and they're like, I'm not feeling well in this apartment, and they get a mold test back. Then you present it to your landlord and say, look, I'm breaking my lease. I'm leaving. I'm not going to live in a place that's toxic. So that happens. I mean, oh God, like, I've tested thousands and thousands of homes. So that happens very frequently.
Wow.
But I mean, mold problems are resolvable, and especially if you have toxic mold and things like that, you need to know. It really will impact your health. So you want to get those tests done. So that's fixable, and volatile organics are very fixable. That's about reducing your load. Like once you see what your load is, then okay, I need to reduce this. And we tell you specifically, like from your test, you're using too much of this, you're using too much of this, you've got too much wine in your house, you're storing wine, and then we say, look, reduce these and get yourself to a healthy level. So it's all, it's all things that you can make improvements on. And if you can't, then that's when you have to call in remediators or people, if you've got massive radon levels and things like that, then you might have to spend some bucks to get it fixed. But it's worth it, especially if you plan on being in the house for a long time.
Oh, absolutely worth it. Now, in terms of those who have pets, have you ever seen something where a pet got sick or a pet passed away and then you found out that it was due to an environmental pollutant?
Yes. Or we think it was, right? So we did a test and maybe they had toxic mold or something. There's been a lot of situations like that where the pets had certain ailments. So yes, that can happen. You want to just really look into your environments and see what's going on.
I asked because my 11-and-a-half-year-old cat passed away yesterday, and it was very mysterious illness, and the vet said, honestly, I have no idea what's causing this after they ran every test, and they thought it might have been a toxin. And
that's when when you get that answer, like, I don't know, turn and start looking at your environment and do some testing. I mean, you did that, right? I mean, look, when you were in Las Vegas, you knew to test your water. You said that, look, it shouldn't smell this way. So if you have any inclination, I mean, to me, if you're really into wellness, the amount of money we spend on organic food, the amount of money we spend on going to the doctors, these tests are not expensive. You're talking about, to do like a mold and allergen test, you're talking about $400. That's not a lot of money. That's nothing. Like, it's the amount of money we spend on personal care products and, everything for health, essential oils, this, that, massage, whatever. To me, it's like, okay, do one test a year and figure out what's going on in your environment, because that's affecting you probably more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, absolutely.
you're not talking about an expensive thing. You know what I mean? Right. It's not something where it's going to be thousands of dollars. You can do a volatile organic test for about $350. You can do a formaldehyde test for about $100. You can do molds and allergens for about $400. And these are quite, a number of tests at once, because you got to take a couple samples. You can do your protein testing is a little more expensive depending on what you test for. But again, it's like about $400. And what I encourage too is there was a study that came out of Harvard that I got information I was privy to. It was a private study that was done, and they looked at homes, and they found that I think it was about 1,000 homes that they did. Almost every one of them had peanut allergy or peanut protein. So what we're finding now is that, all these kids that are coming down with these severe allergic reactions to peanut, it's because peanut is everywhere. It's a protein that has gotten to be abundantly available. I mean, it's in every house. Like, so if you go to a house and you test for peanut protein, it shows up. So the question is, it doesn't really, it kind of explains why so many people are getting this allergy now, because it's really common. We didn't know that before. So it's interesting that, these things are just becoming more prevalent, probably because we're more populated, more people are using peanut butter. It's a very hard protein to get rid of. It's an oily protein. So same with cat. Cat is very challenging to remove from a house. And these proteins are like sticky balls. Like, imagine something stuck all over your microphone or stuck to your walls. They stick to things, and they're not easy to remove. So if a cat or a dog had been in an environment, you could go into that environment 3 years later and the proteins are still there if you're not wiping it down, cleaning your ducts, doing all this stuff. So if you have allergens or inflammation in the body and you get a response to these things, it can be really bad for you. So amazing. This is normally the time, right as I'm wrapping up an interview, where I ask the guests to share a challenge that they could challenge our listeners to do for now in the next 7 days, something that they can do to improve their health. You've thrown down so many
tips and challenges really for us. Is there anything else that you could tell us to do that we will diligently do for the next 7 days to see an improvement in our home environment?
The relative humidity monitor, pick one up at your local hardware store, monitor your relative humidity, try to keep it between 30 and 50%, and no shoes in the house.
I love it. Absolutely. I love it. Thank you so much, Caroline. You've been absolutely amazing. All the links to Caroline's website are going to be in the show notes of today's podcast, healthyhomeexpert.com. This has been such a wealth of information. I've really thoroughly enjoyed having you on. I'd love to have you on again should you come up with a book or something you want to educate our listeners on another aspect of what you do. I'd love to have you back on the show.
Thank you, Ashley. And you're an awesome interviewer, and it was really fun. It went so fast.
Yay! Great. Thanks so much. Are you looking to optimize your health? Are you looking to get the best supplements at the lowest price? For high-quality supplements and to talk to someone about what supplements are best for you, go to takeyoursupplements.com, and one of our fantastic True Health coaches will help you pick out the right supplements for you that are the highest quality and the best price. That's takeyoursupplements.com. Takeyoursupplements.com. That's takeyoursupplements.com. Be sure to ask about free shipping and our awesome referral program.